Tonight is June 20th, 2019. Important quarter over here. Let's commence the meeting for tonight. This is a special meeting. There's one matter on the agenda, which is CB 2016-08, 100 State Street, LLC. And when we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's have the Open Public Meetings Act. Let's have the statement as we normally put it into the record. Thank you.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by adoption of the appropriate resolutions listing the 2019 meeting dates, by adoption of supplemental resolutions, by emailing a copy of said resolutions to the record and the Jewish standards, and by filing a copy with the Township Clerk's office, by posting on the municipal bulletin board, and this statement will be included in the minutes.
So ordered. Thank you. Mr. Rosen, let's have a roll call.
Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Mulligan,
Here.
Mr. Rosen,
Here.
Mr. Green, Mr. Freeman,
Here.
Mr. Bernstein,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Weathers.
Thank you very much. Okay, and also we have with us tonight as a Mr. Ironman Brian Ironman is the counsel for the board tonight, since Mr. Medeo could not be here. Okay. So, yes. You are in charge. You're the most important person here. Thank you. Okay. Just keep screaming when we don't speak up. Okay. I think we're middle of Mr. Lydon's testimony, Ms. Berger.
So, Mr. Chairman,
So you gotta go back to the mic.
just as a matter of logistics, you want me to have Mr. Lydon stand here with me because there's no microphone over there.
There's two right in front of you.
So it's okay if I have one.
Or maybe if this one is on, Tim, he can sit there. Go on.
Or we can pull the table this way a little bit if that would be all right.
That'll be better because the
Okay,
position.
let's, if you give us a minute.
Sure, we'll give you a minute.
Logistics. Sure. Well, I don't want to, maybe we'll switch. Is that all right with you? We're going to switch.
Okay, that's
We're
not
going to
good.
switch.
You want to sit over there?
You want to sit over there?
It's easier. You have a lot of noise by here. Let's give
We'll
it
get it. Where's Al? That'll be fine. You can stay there.
No outlet.
No Al.
No, I can use this right here. I just want to be able to use it. I can't.
That's right.
Much better.
Angie was a, you said, okay.
All right, look at that.
Okay, are we ready to proceed? Shut off.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Wendy Berger. I'm the attorney for the applicant here for the continuing hearing on this matter. At the last hearing, we were in the middle of the testimony of Mr. Lydon, the planner. He is here this evening. He's still under oath, and we'd like to begin by continuing with his testimony.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Lydon. I think you have to pull the mic over to your side. First of all, so you know, you shut these off. It's a little button. No. The green light has come off. Is it on? Yes. Now, okay.
If the board recalls, Mr. Lydon went over the testimony with regard to the location of the property, the conditions of the property, the conditions of the area, the surrounding area. We talked, and we were talking about the variances that were being requested.
Right.
And the first thing I want to point out is that we're not here seeking a D1 typical use variance. And that's because, unlike the current use on the property, which is not a permitted use, we are seeking to establish a permitted use on the property. So we do not need the D1 use variance. We don't need to show special reasons.
So what is
One
there?
second. First, we've got to pull the mic closer to you when you answer the question, because I see people in the back cannot hear what you're saying. So that's number one. Number two, Ms. Berger, did you send us new plans with respect to the 25 additional parking spots that we talked about last time?
No, we did not.
Okay, are you going to plan on doing that?
No, we're not.
You're not?
No, because as we discussed, it is our opinion and our experts' opinion that those spaces are not needed and that it would not be good planning and good zoning to increase the size of that parking deck due to the fact that it would then go to the property line. We would have a large wall around it in the back, which we think will have detrimental impact around the neighbors. We don't think it is part of
Isn't it? Okay, fine. I understand what you're saying. I'm just, someone, if they should approve, if the board will approve this, I would like to see those 25 additional spaces on the premises as a condition to approval, if that would come to that. Everything else would be acceptable, at least the way I see the balances that we have to look at. That will be a efficiency unless those 25 spaces were actually put in as available additional spaces for the tenants and the guests of the tenants.
So we listened to your concern, and your concern was additional parking. And what we've done since then is Mr. Lydon and has had a chance to speak with the town's traffic expert and discuss the ability to restripe additional parking spots in the street.
It has nothing to do with the premises. I'm saying on the premises. I think that it is important to have the additional 25 spaces. Listen, you can present everything you want. I'm just feeling at this point, if everything else pans out for this application, I think I require additional 25 spaces because I think that will be the appropriate balance and the appropriate use of that space in on this particular site. So I think I make myself very clear what
I
I say.
understand that is your position.
And it's your application, so you do what you want.
Right. Based upon the need, the requirement of RSIS, which we we have more than what's required by the code. We thought, based upon your comment that you'd like to see more parking, that after you've been on that street, you will see that part of the street is parallel parking and part of the street is angled parking.
I know
So-
the location very well.
So we had discussed with your expert the ability to make more angled parking on the street. That way there would be more parking spaces, not only available for the whole area, not just for this project, which if we increase the parking on site, it would only be for the apartment dwellers, because remember there's a gate that comes down, so it doesn't even help visitors. It would only be for the apartment dwellers. But by restriping, we could pick up more parking spots on the street.
How many more parking spaces are you gonna pick up on the street?
So we think it'll be about 8 spots. It could be more, it could be less, and the reason I can't tell you the exact number, if you recall, there was testimony that the town is looking into possibly relocating bus stop on the street, because based upon where that might be relocated, it could affect that number. So
But still, that is not, that's very nice, that you get the additional 8 spots, and I think that would be a good idea to create more parking on the street for everyone. But this doesn't really absolve or take away my comments about the 25 spots on the premises.
well,
You don't have to argue with me, I'm just telling you how I feel, so I can give you an indication that what I think is necessary. And if it was up to me and everything else was equal, as I said before, I think this application can only be granted if everything else pans out, that these additional 25 spots will be in place. Okay? So I don't have to address that anymore. Please continue.
So Mike, I was asking you a question, and my question is, the existing building on the site, which had been used for medical and other office use, was that use a permitted use within the zone?
No, it was not.
So what was used for was a non-conforming use.
That's correct, and by approving this application, the conformity with the surrounding land uses will be enhanced and improved.
And so a multi-family use is a permitted use within the zone, is that correct?
That's correct, within the R1 zone, which allows for multifamily housing.
Are there variances required with regard to this application?
Yes, there are a few. There are 2 use name variances, even though through the years, the courts have changed the burden of proof on these type of applications. More specifically, we're seeking density and height variances, and those are called 40, 55, D, 74, and 5 and 6. So we're seeking to exceed the maximum permitted density and the maximum permitted height, and we don't need to show suitability, we don't need to show how we comply with the secret decision. Instead, the decisions are, the court decisions are Grubbs versus Rahway for density, and Grasso versus Spring Lakes for height. And both those decisions sort of evolved out of the Coventry decisions. And they basically ask you to show how the site can still function even though you're seeking variances. And I think we can meet that burden. Then, of course, you always have to show the negative criteria for every variance. And the first way to show that the site functions well is whether or not there's consistency with the master plan. And in this case, there is. The master plan intent here in Teaneck is to encourage, not just to allow, but to encourage the expansion of multifamily housing where it doesn't impinge upon single-family neighborhoods. And you've all been to the site, there are no single-family neighborhoods on State Street or Air Street behind us. The master plan continues and talks about encouraging compatible infill development. We're adjacent to other multifamily developments, so we do achieve that compatibility with the surrounding development. Your master plan also encourages the tally of commercial districts. One way you do that, as I testified at the last hearing, is by putting feet on the streets. I call it wallets on the streets. Homeowners in proximity to your commercial districts. In this particular case, there's a commercial district to the east of us along Teaneck Road, and there is another commercial district about equal distance away along Queen Anne. So as far as supporting the commercial districts, this proposed development supports too. The master plan also calls for the provision of affordable housing. I've testified that this applicant is willing to provide for affordable housing. This application's been going on for a while, certainly not any fault of the board's. When we started, Teaneck was looking for 10% affordable housing set aside. We are proposing 15%, which is what Teaneck is now seeking. So that's been an increase since this application started. We're willing to meet that higher level of affordable housing.
And that's being met on-site, correct, not off-site?
That's correct. Those affordable units will be constructed as part of this development if the board approves it.
And that was as far as bedroom, 2 1-bedrooms, 6 2-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedrooms. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and that's consistent with the soon-to-be signed, we think, Teaneck settlement agreement with a fair share housing center, and it's also consistent with the COA regulations from 1993. Your master plan also seeks consistency with height and density, and once again, we're consistent and compatible with that. And because it's in New Jersey, your master plan encourages actions which are consistent with the purposes of the municipal land use law, and there are a number of purposes of the municipal land use law that this application follows. One is to encourage municipal action to guide appropriate use of land. What this burger is passing to you are photos that I took either earlier this month or late last month. They are photos of the site that we have, the conditions of the site today.
Hold on 1 second. Who's testifying to this?
I am.
So let's just walk over what we're testifying to.
Chair, you have to speak.
What we're testifying to, just
Yes.
before we give out the pictures.
Certainly. Those are photos that I took. I report to you that they accurately reflect conditions when I took them, and I believe they continue to accurately reflect conditions. There are two photos of the subject site.
Hold on, so they're marked as what, A? A. Go ahead.
Yes, there are two images of the subject site as it looks today. I think the first one, the one on top, is more of a frontal view, and the second one is looking at the eastern side wall. That's the condition of the site today. As I said earlier, it's a dead abandoned office building. So this application encourages municipal action to guide appropriate use of land by causing that use to be eliminated and a conforming, consistent, and compatible use to be to replace it. It talks about promoting establishment of appropriate population densities. We believe we achieve that with the proposed use. It talks about encouraging appropriate and efficient use of public funds. Again, another municipal land use purpose. As part of this application, we are willing to work with the Township of Teaneck to do two things. One, to take a lot on the north side of State Street and create a 44-space public parking lot that would be available to the public as the Township of Teaneck decides. those spaces would not be in any way reserved for the use or enjoyment of this particular lot or the people living in it. The other thing we're proposing to do, that's an efficient use of public funds, is we're again willing to work with the township as they direct to restripe and possibly move bus stops to provide additional on-street parking on State Street.
And there you say you can get approximately 8, 7, 8, 9.
That's what we believe, Mr. Chairman. That's a preliminary number.
We couldn't give you an exact number.
I understand, but that was what
Yes.
was made a representation
Yes.
about that.
Yes, correct. And then another purpose of the municipal land use law is the notion of a desirable visual environment. I've given you photos of what the site looks like today, now. Not too good. I'm not the architect on the project, but we have introduced architectural renderings of what the project will look like, and I believe it is a greatly enhanced desirable visual environment. So we are meeting that purpose of the municipal land use law as well. Yes. I'll be happy to. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just for clarification, the first set of photos we distributed tonight, were they marked as A8?
18.
18.
Consisting of 2 pages.
Thank you.
That's correct, thank you.
So this is going to be 19.
This is an exhibit, A19. Those are photographs that I took in the same time frame. This
When
one,
were they taken?
they were taken either earlier this month or the end of May 2019. There are 3 photographs comprising A19. They show buildings. The first one is the building at the corner of State Street and
next to the Broadway Shopping Center, so called,
that's correct.
on State Street.
Just west of the shopping center.
And this is the way I see it, you correct me if I'm wrong, a southerly direction of the photograph.
Yes, I'm looking southwest, I believe. Yes.
Southeast, if any.
Okay, southeast.
Very familiar with that.
The second photograph,
What's the height of this building?
Everybody has to speak into that.
Do you know offhand what the height of this five-story building is?
it's 5-story, but I was not able to find the height. The next photograph is 1475 Palisades Avenue.
This looks like the east side,
It's the northern side of State Street.
northeastern side of that terrace circle, right? Terrace circle. So these are the garages that are along Palisades.
I believe that's correct, Mr. Rosen, yes.
And we're looking from the south, and this is on the east side of Palisades.
Yes, so I'm looking north, yes.
Right, looking north, got it, okay.
And I think what's interesting about both of those photographs is they are about equidistant from the site. One is a few hundred feet to the east, and one is a few hundred feet to the west and slightly north. But they sort of bookend the proposed development. The third photograph is what I think is called Teaneck Gardens, and that portion of Teaneck Gardens
Square.
Teaneck Square, okay, Teaneck Square, is the Queen Anne frontage. So it's sort of opposite 1475,
No, it's
1475.
not correct. You're looking from the railroad tracks on Palisades, you're looking at the rear of the building. When was this taken?
It was early May, and
So this is after the building's already completed, so yeah, you're looking, I recognize this, you're looking across the street probably from near the railroad tracks, and you're looking due east. This is the northern side of the building.
okay.
Okay.
And
Great.
what is that building?
That is another image of 1475.
And all these buildings that you were showing photographs, are they multifamily residential properties?
Yes, they are.
And is that consistent with the neighborhood of multifamily residential properties?
Yes, it is,
And
including properties on both sides of the subject property and behind it.
are some of the properties in the neighborhood also built to the property line on the side or very close?
Very close to the side, and the one that's on State and Ayers has 2 front yards, and they are both very shallow, and I believe that they have less front yard width than the subject site under proposed conditions.
And the property adjoining with the garages, is that close to the garages, close to the property line?
Yes, it is.
Just out of curiosity, I understand why you're showing us the first apartment building, and the third page is the newest apartment building. What's the purpose of the second sheet? What are you trying to tell us by that? It's a 3-story.
That's the one that's across the street, I'm sorry, I missed it. That's the one that's across the street from 1475.
Yeah, I
I'm putting it
understand. I'm
over.
just trying.
Wait. One person at a time, we have a stenographer.
I get that. My question is, what's the intent of this picture? What are you trying to state by this?
I was showing that the introduction of height in the neighborhood is not a new phenomenon. We have the building on State Street in Ayers Court. It's an older building. We have newer development, and just to the north of this site, we have older development.
Okay, point taken.
Thank you.
The new development, that was not done by zoning by this point, is that correct?
That was done by this board. Mr. Burgess testified. Might have been me. I think it was Mr. Burgess.
Okay.
As with all variances, we need to show that there's no negative detriment to the public good, and we believe this application furthers the public good.
Why?
I'm glad you asked, Mr. Chairman. First, there are no single-family dwellings nearby. And that's important because your master plan calls for encouraging multifamily housing developments if single-family dwellings are not in the neighborhood. I would define this neighborhood as being one that does not have single-family neighborhoods, so it encourages and furthers the goals of the master plan. Second reason, there's no substantial detriment. There are similar uses nearby. The third reason is there are similar heights nearby. And I think this is an interesting portion of the testimony. Some of that was done, some of those heights are very old, as shown in A18 and A19. Or actually, that's A19. Some of them were through actions of this board, and some of them, quite frankly, were also through actions of the mayor and council. So 1,500...
What do you mean by that?
That's what I was just going to get to, Mr. Chairman. 1,500 North Teaneck Road, the old Verizon building, was a subject of a rezoning by the mayor and council. And as a result of that, they allowed a building that was to be 5 stories. So they saw the wisdom and they saw the benefit of the taller structure in the area. And that structure, if you will, is visible as it's going up if you stand in front of the subject site. The other building, which I...
So do you know the height of that structure when it's done with the skirts and everything?
It's 55 feet and 66, 55 feet, I'm
So
sorry.
the Verizon-
5 stories
I'm
and
sorry,
66.
slow down, slow down.
The Verizon
The
building.
Verizon project, as we call it, on the corner of State Street, or behind the gas station, and State Street and Teaneck Road, that you said that was approved by the mayor and council.
Correct.
How high is that project supposed to end up? It's not finished, but it's almost there.
It's 5 stories and 66 feet.
66 feet.
Correct.
And the proposed application height that they seek is what?
73 feet? 73 feet to the roof?
I don't know, I asked you.
73.25 feet to the roof.
73.
There is another building in the area which I did not take photos of because it's in the area, but it's not visible from our site, is the Avalon Bay site. That building also received a rezoning by the mayor and council, and that building was allowed to have 5 stories as well, and there, the maximum height limitation is 70 feet. So I think two things that are worth noting. Both of those rezonings are recent. Both of those rezonings are in the area, one can be seen from the other site, and they both allow for 5-story developments, and let's call it 70 feet, 66 feet. I believe that's very similar, compatible, comparable to what we're proposing at 73.25 feet.
Would you happen to know the height of the newest project on the Queen Anne side, Teaneck Square, the newest project that was finished last year? Page 3 on your second. Would you happen to know what the height of the building is on the Queen Anne side? Because the building slopes down, but the Palisade is taller, but
I don't have a number in feet. I believe that's an 8-story structure.
it's 7. So, well, it's 7, it's raised up, so the first floor is on stilts to provide the parking. So it's, I would call it 8, but actually 7 stories of residential apartments, but it's in reality 8 stories. So would you estimate what that height is?
The garage parking lot will are probably at least 8 feet clear, and then the residential are probably on the low side to be 9 feet clear.
So that would be 7 times 9, 63, plus another 8 is about 70, 71, something like that.
Yes, sir. And then there's one last property that I want to discuss as far as height, and that's the property that was formerly developed in the gas station. It's at the corner of Queen Anne Road. It was approved by this board. Mr. Burgess did testify on that one several years ago.
Is that 140 State Street?
Yes, it is. And that
we
was,
were just, sorry to interrupt, we're just, the newest project is probably more like 80 feet. Just thinking about the steel, and I know there's a parapet wall on top, so it's more like 80, maybe 85 feet.
I want to be conservative, Mr. Rosa, but you're probably right.
Okay, thank you.
So 140 Queen Anne Road, State Street, I'm sorry, is an application that's been approved
By this board?
by this board. It allowed for a 5-story building, and on an 18,000 square foot lot, it allowed 42 dwelling units. So again, even though that's not built, there is an approval on it, and I think it shows that what the applicant, with this application seeking to do, is very consistent and compatible with both the existing pattern of development, the newer pattern of development, and the pattern that hasn't been constructed yet. So I think those all go to the negative criteria. I think another issue that addresses the negative criteria and shows how this application enhances the public good is the design provides for articulation, for light, and for air. And I think it's a very attractive mid-block development, which, with its articulation back and forth and green areas in the front yard, will clearly create a desirable visual environment and much better looking site than what is there now. And aesthetic improvement is one of the bases and purposes of the municipal land use law. And I think it's wise not to overlook the introduction of new housing units close to businesses, which they can support those businesses, as I mentioned earlier, and also public transit. There are literally bus stops in State Street right in front of this development. There are additional bus stops on Teaneck Road, which do provide express turnpike service to New York City during rush hour. So as we try to move commuters out of cars and off the carbon cycle, we need to provide reasonable alternatives for them to commute to work. And having a bus right at the doorstep literally achieves that purpose. Another way we're not creating substantial detriment, but in fact enhancing the public good, is the construction of the public parking lot on the north side of Teaneck Road that we talked about earlier. 44 additional parking spaces are what we believe can be placed on that site, and our client has agreed to provide for that parking if the township wants it. So that will increase the supply of public parking. There's something that the board should be aware of, because I believe it was approved by the planning board. The development just to the south of the subject site has just received approval to add 20 parking spaces on its site, on Air Street. So a couple of things are happening. One, the demand for on-street parking is being reduced by 20 spaces. That's a significant reduction through action that another property owner is taking.
Demand for?
Yes, sir.
Just making 20 more spaces available.
On-site where there weren't any. So that development did not have on-site parking. With this application, which is now, with the other application that I'm referencing, which is now being implemented as we sit here, the demand for 20 spaces will be eliminated. So there'll be more spaces for those who still desire them. In addition, this applicant is increasing the supply of on-street parking by the 8 or so that we talked about earlier, plus the new parking lot across the street. So we will be simultaneously seeing a reduction in the demand for on-street parking, and we will also be seeing an increase in the supply of on-street parking. So I think that goes to enhancing the public good. I talked last time, we expect about 7 or 8 new school-age children, public school-age children to be residing in the development based on the latest Rutgers report. So we don't think there's any substantial...
Based upon what report?
The latest Who Lives in New Jersey Housing Report prepared by Dr. Liskikin, which is published by Rutgers and is dated November 2018.
Do you know if Teaneck has made any studies on themselves?
The Teaneck School Board did do a study. I overed it. I looked at it. Quite frankly, I'm not sure it's too relevant to this particular application, and I say that with all due respect to the person who prepared it and to the Teaneck Board and to this board. It didn't address what the likely school impacts would be of this development. It wasn't included.
Did it address any other developments?
It did, and quite frankly...
Which ones?
Why don't you a second, we'll take that.
Sure.
It's entitled, it's entitled Demographic Study for the Teaneck School District, Teaneck, Bergen County, State of New Jersey. It was prepared by Whitehall Associates, Inc., and gives his name and address, Kinnelon, New Jersey, and it's dated April 10th, 2019. It is a 12-page report. I don't know who want to introduce this.
No.
Yeah, and I say that with all respect because he didn't address this site. But to answer the question, which ones he did address, he addressed 1500 Teaneck Road, the Verizon site.
And what was addressed with respect to the Verizon site in that report?
Well, he got the number of units wrong. He's off by 5. There's 228 units in that development.
How many?
228. He says there's 223. He also deals with 1387 Hill Street, which is another development in the area that's Port approved.
Well, let's be a little bit more simple so I can understand.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's talk about what did he say the impact would be? The impact would be
On the school system with respect to the 200 and some, how many?
the Verizon site, 200, how many again?
223.
23 new units. What would the impact of those 223 units be on the school system?
He believes it'd be 44 students spread out among the grades.
44.
Yes.
Means how many per unit? Not even 0.25.
Yes. He also looked at 1387 Hill Street, which is an application I testified before this board on. He says there are 7 units in that application.
How much would that impact?
Well, he's wrong. There aren't 7 units in that proposed building, unless the client snuck another unit in without telling you, because it was only approved for 6. He says there would be a total of 6 school-age children. Quite frankly, I don't know how you... I'm sorry, I read, yeah. I combined 2 lines. He said there'd be 2 in that development. He also looked at 1775 Windsor Road, which is, I believe, the Avalon Bay development.
How many units does he list there? Let's start with that.
248, which I believe is correct.
Okay?
He says 30, 46, 46, about 63 school-age children in that development.
So that's approximately a quarter, 0.25 each unit, is that right? If my math is okay?
I couldn't do that math this way, Mr. Chairman.
So anyway, the impact of at least those 2 projects, at least, sorry. The two large projects that you detailed should add, give or take a few children, about 100 children.
I don't think that's what he was estimating, yes.
Okay, but this proposed project, he didn't analyze?
No, sir.
Could one extrapolate based upon your experience the amount of estimated school children that this site would generate?
About 6 or 7, Mr. Chairman.
And how do you make that calculation?
By taking the tables and charts that are found in this study,
This being,
who lives in New Jersey housing, the numbers, the November 2018 study from Rutgers, and applying the multipliers to the various bedroom distributions, and we would come up with about 6 or 7 school-age children in any given year.
right, is it fair to say that in the study made by the school board, that it seemed approximately it's either 0.2 to 0.25 per unit of children that would be generated by these units. Is that fair to say that this person who made these calculations would come to a number like that, or is that an average, let's say, over all these three projects, is there or are there a common, in other words, I'm asking you, can you, out of that report, extrapolate based upon the 223 units at Verizon, the 200, however many units at the Avalon and the other buildings, on an average, come to a number that would, that this report would, on average, hold on. Are we okay? We'll take a break. Take a break. Okay. Is the young lady in the back all right?
She's okay.
Okay, good. Okay, we had a little break here. So let's, did you get my question, Mr. Lydon?
I did, and I'm a little uncomfortable, Mr. Chairman. I think the report is what it is, but I really haven't analyzed it, and I think there's a better report forthcoming. Your own planning firm is doing a comprehensive area-wide study of more than just school-age children, and quite frankly, I think that study will be comprehensive and accurate. I'm sure they'll have the right number of units. And I'm just a little uncomfortable about giving too much weight to this report, which wasn't done for tonight's hearing.
I'm not asking that you give weight to it. I'm just asking to see if you can help me summarize it in a way that I understand what is this person's general gist. But if you're not comfortable about doing that because it's not your report and it could be weighted, I guess, by different sizes of the units that are intended to be built, then it may be, it's a different formula. So I'm not pushing you on that. If we could, we could.
Yeah, and with the inaccuracies that I see in it, I'm a little reluctant.
Could you refresh our memory about, I think you had testified at the previous session about the Teaneck school population?
That was,
Now, I don't know whether it was current or whether it was,
yes.
what the comparison was. Can you just give us something of those pieces of business?
I have the numbers, and you can, from last time, Mr. Rosen, I think it's 2009 and 2010.
Right, we looked at
Mr. Lydon testified that there was 4,162 students in the public school system, and in 2016, 2017, there were 3,621. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what I wrote down.
And if I remember right, I haven't found it yet, the reduction in school-age children was 541 students during this decade in the Teaneck school district. Their enrollment has dropped 541 students in that time frame.
That's across all schools in the entire town?
Yes, Mr. Roden, it's the numbers that the Teaneck Board of Ed reports to the Department of Education annually. So from 2009 to 2010 to today, the drop has been 541 students as it went from, the student population went from 4,162 students to 3,621 for last year, for which numbers were reported. A drop of 541 students. So based on that, and the low, I conclude that there will not be a negative impact on the Board of Ed or the school district. I'm not the travel engineer, but there was testimony presented to the board that the traffic would be able to be absorbed into the traffic, into the local school, local street network without a significant loss of service. We're also seeking some variances for area and bulk. Our lot is supposed to be, in the ordinances, 1.5 acres. We have something smaller than that, 0.79 acres, so we're seeking a variance for that. All the surrounding properties adjacent to us are developed, so there is no additional land to acquire. We are stuck with the 34,500 square foot lot. We're also seeking setbacks from the front yard, the side yard, and the rear setbacks. However, we are very consistent with the surrounding development. We are also consistent with some recent approvals, and including some of the rezonings. I keep messing up here. The Queen Anne development that I have photos of, the impervious coverage there was allowed to be 80% of lot area. So we are very consistent with that number. The Verizon number was, I'm sorry, 1500 State Street was allowed to be 80% of lot area. The Avalon David was at 70% of lot area. Our proposed lot coverage is lower than very consistent to 140 State Street. Their impervious coverage was 98%. They also had a 0-foot setback along State Street and along Queen Anne Road. And also, the intensity of their development not only was that site approved for 42 units, they were also approved for something like 8,000 square feet of retail space on the first floor. So I think as you look at the development, the property, proposed development is very consistently compatible with the surrounding development and the recent approvals in the area. And I think those variances can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public.
At the prior hearing, you talked about the shape of this lot and the fact that the building will be longer in width than in the depth. Could you just explain that to the board again and go over that?
Yeah, most residential lots are narrower but deep. A typical city lot is estimated is 50 feet wide and 100 feet deep. In this situation, we have the reverse. We have a lot which is 110 feet in depth, but 300 feet in width. So the proposed building, by surprise, sort of mirrors and mimics the lot configuration. It's a longer but shallower building. That's no surprise. We think the setbacks are appropriate. The building to the west of us is within 10 feet of the property line, and it actually has an area where it's about 7 feet from the property line. We're more than double that. We're at 15 feet fact, part of the driveway approaches onto the subject property.
Which one?
The driveway to the west, their western driveway approaches onto the subject site. The property to the east has one-story garages immediately on the property line. So we think that the 15-foot side yards are more than adequate for the pattern of development that's established. There are a few waivers that are mostly associated with parking. They have to deal with the RSIS 9 by 18-foot parking spaces. We're seeking we are proposing 9 by 8s, but the pole supporting the building in the area of the pole only makes it a little bit narrower for the foot or so that the pole is there. We also are seeking, your ordinance limits driveway width to 20 feet, we're seeking to go wider than that, to provide for access in and out that's safe and appropriate, and that was all testified to earlier. We think those actually enhance the public benefit as opposed to create a detriment. So we believe the building height and density are approvable, and we think the C variances and the waivers can also be granted without any detriment to the public good or without substantial impairment to the master plan and zoning ordinance.
No further questions of this witness?
All right, do we have any questions from members of the board of this witness? Mr. Lydon.
I have a couple of questions. No, we can't hear you.
Mr. Lydon.
The first question, you mentioned possibly restricting the street to create 8 additional parking spots and possibly moving a bus stop.
Yes.
Have you guys considered the traffic impact of that proposed change?
Yes, we have. We have been in contact with the township engineer, and everything is obviously only will go forward if the township agrees that it makes sense to do it and it is safe and an appropriate design modification. But we are making the offer.
And your traffic expert is here, and he can address that if you'd like, who is expert.
The other question is when you're talking about the negative criteria and the impact on the schools, it sounds like there's an inherent assumption that the less number of students in the school is better for the school. What is that? Because it sounded like there would not be a significant negative impact on the schools because the number of students was so low. Is that, because I can think of reasons why more students maybe could if you're getting funding per student, if you want to increase the diversity in the school. So what is that assumption based on?
You're absolutely right. I think it's the hangover of too many years of testifying. One of the concerns, we always have two concerns when it's a residential development, traffic and school kids, and you're going to be overloading the school districts. What's been happening is that, especially since the 2008 recession, the fertility rates have dropped dramatically. In fact, the weekend after I spoke at the last hearing, there was an article in the New York Times, which I flipped out, on Saturday, May 18th, and it talked about, the headline is, data shows fall in birth rate for 4th year in a row. And it also talks about the 2018 total fertility rate also fell to a record low. So what happened previously, before the recession, people were worried about schools being overcrowded. What's happening now is private schools are actually emptying out. And I think we're soon going to get to the point where funding becomes an issue, and also what they can offer. If you don't have school children, you may not be able to offer that enhanced art or music or Latin class. So it's really to show that this application, if it's approved as proposed, will not put a burden on the school district.
And the last question, just, can you confirm that you are not seeking a variance for parking? So the number of spaces on the lot, not including the additional lot that you propose to, pay for the town. On-site, the number of parking is sufficient. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. And let me give a brief explanation for that. Before 1993, towns were allowed to create residential parking standards. In 1993, New Jersey and New England changed that, and they gave us the residential site improvement standards. Those standards try to estimate what the parking demand might be in rural Salem County, in Hoboken, in Teaneck. What they did was they eventually gave up to creating a one-size-fits-all, and they said, these are recommended numbers, we'll leave it up to local expertise and local experience. We submitted these plans showing 100 on-site parking spaces. The plans have been reviewed by Teaneck's experts, and I'm not going to testify for them. They found the parking more than sufficient and more than adequate. There's also a little extra part to that. Part of the RSI standards has a guest parking component. And in this case, I think the guest parking standard is like 32 spaces or something. Those guest stalls are not required to be provided on site. So, if you want to take a very hard approach on the parking demand, you could say that it's X, and the off-site parking satisfies the guest parking. So yes, we have more than adequate parking on site, yes.
And again, the board's expert is here this evening.
By the way, if I could just, I earlier said that the lot was 110 feet deep. I misspoke, it's 115 feet deep. I just want to correct that. Sorry.
Just thinking of the existing parking problem in town as probably resolved before planning when the buildings or when that part of town was built many years ago. And just thinking forward to the future, just wondering what plans have you got in place for deliveries, autonomous driving, electric cars?
We have designed and shown in architectural plans an area for bike storage, so people can bike. We also have the area for motorcycle mobile storage, and they do not occupy space for cars. In addition, for the delivery situation, we do have space in the building, dedicated space for taking delivery packages. As far as autonomous vehicles, I think what that's going to happen, when that happens, is going to reduce the amount of parking that a residential building will demand. Because I envision creating a service. You call up, you order a car, it comes, picks you up, takes you where it goes, and then it leaves. And then it comes back and picks you up. It takes you back to your home and leaves again. So I think the advent of autonomous vehicles will reduce the number of vehicles people own and will reduce the need for parking in multifamily buildings.
I think what I meant was the autonomous driving, or for people thinking how the roads will look in maybe 10, 15 years' time, is that there'll be a heavy frequency of cars pulling up to the building and pulling away, and the same with deliveries. I was at a New Jersey planning board meeting recently, and a couple of buildings that were being built, they had lanes at the front of the building that would allow cars to pull up and move away. And I know that you're talking about adding parking at the front of the street, so I'm also thinking about heavy frequency of deliveries from online orders. So there could be a lot of cars coming and pulling up briefly. Have you considered that?
Yeah, and I think we're fortunate here. As you know, there's parking spaces now, we're proposing to modify that. I think when the autonomous vehicle reaches that level of utilization, I think we'll be asking the township to take some of those parking spaces out and convert them to autonomous vehicle waiting zones. And I think you're right, I think it would be a very quick pickup and discharge, so I don't think you need many spaces to accommodate the van.
If you recall, in the earlier testimony, the board had asked us to consider having a spot for delivery on site, and we did add that spot to the front of the building.
Have you made any provisions for electric car charging ports?
No, we did not. At this point, that's something that could be added to the development as the need develops. But I think if I read the most recent number, less than 1% of the new car market is being attracted to the electric vehicle, so it's still a very small percentage.
One more question, just to get clarity on the parking across the road. Until you mentioned guest parking just now, I was struggling to understand the correlation between the parking across the road and approving your application on this building. Are you saying that what is the purpose of the parking across the road? Is that to satisfy the relevance to this application? Is that to satisfy guest parking?
No, it's not. We believe the 100 stalls on site are more than sufficient to meet both the tenants and the guest parking needs. The 44 spaces across the street that we're proposing in cooperation with the township are for the general public, but not people living or using or guests of our building. What I was trying to do was relate that to how people are RSI as far as to address parking standards. But to be clear, we believe, we're very confident about this, that the parking that's on the proposed plans is more than adequate to meet the demands of the building and its guests.
I'm not sure if it's relevant, but it seems to me that the parking across the road is almost like a sweetener. I don't see the relevance of that necessarily in this application.
Well, it's recognizing that there's a parking crunch in the neighborhood. It's trying to enhance the public good. It's recognizing that that first building in A18 is, if I remember right, 40 units of housing in there with zero parking. So we are seeking to do using the township not parcel in parking we anticipate will need for our development.
And I should say, Mr. Lyons answering these questions, he's not the parking expert for the project who had already testified, but we could have the town experts answer some of these questions to help you with the answers if the board wants that at this point.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just wanted to clarify some statistics you gave us the last meeting about rental units in town
Yes.
and vacancy rates. My handwriting is not legible.
Give us 1 second, we're going to get that information.
I can't believe the numbers you wrote, Mr. Rosen, because you're so low.
Well, that's one of the questions I have. I just wanted to make sure my notes were consistent with what you were testifying to.
Let the record reflect this on the testimony.
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Rosen.
so you testified, I think, that there were approximately 14,000 single-family housing units and about 3,500 apartments.
I believe I testified there are about 14,000 total housing units.
Okay,
And
3,500 or so apartments.
I think that sounds right.
And then you said, I'm not sure what year this was for, but you said that the vacancy rate was under 1%.
Yes, and let me clarify if I can for you. I'm reading from American Fact Finder, selected housing characteristics for the year 2017. It's the most current ones that are available. And according to, and this is for Teaneck only, according to this data, the rental vacancy rate in Teaneck is 0.6%.
0.6, so that means about 20 apartments turn over every year? Is that about right?
Maybe a little bit more than that, but somewhere that low number, yes.
Okay, and then you also gave us a figure on about how many, on average, how many people per apartment for the rental units of the Teaneck. What was that number?
The average household size of a rented occupied unit, again, from the American Fact Finders 2017 data, is 2.38.
2.3. So let's estimate down. But 2 people per apartment. Now, you just testified, I think, totaling up how many new units either have been built or are planned. I think you cited between Windsor Road and Teaneck, aka Brighton, and Queen Anne. I think it's about 600 or 700 units.
I think that's accurate.
So between all and this is another 60, so let's call it 700, 800. So between these 4 developments that are currently approved, built, or are being applied for, that should bring between 1,500 to 2,000 new residents to Teaneck,
That's a reasonable assumption, yes.
and they're all in that basic Queen Anne Plaza area, right? Windsor Road probably is a little further north, but
And that's on the other side of the tracks.
okay, all right. So those numbers are about what you testified to, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from members of the board? Okay, what about experts, town experts? Do you have any questions, Mr. Lydon? Who wants to go first? All right, just go. Let's turn the microphone on. Let's state your name for the record. Not that one. Anything but that one.
How about now?
Now it's fine.
Okay. So I'm Elizabeth Laney, board planner.
Just spell your last name for the record.
Okay, it's Laney, L-E-H-E, N as in Nancy, Y. And so I have questions I want us to just say. Property's located.
If you're going to make a statement, raise your hand.
Okay.
Testimony to this board is the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, something like that.
Yes. Okay, so the property is located in the RM zone. We've made a very good case for multifamily use here. And of course, multifamily use is permitted in the RM zone. So it's not really an issue of whether there should be a multifamily building. We'll go over it.
Can everybody hear her?
Barely.
Barely.
Turn it over.
But let's get the question. We'll get to you. We're going to testify.
All right. So
No expert. But let's
the
get-
question, all right, the question is how do you reconcile this height, this density, these variances for setbacks with the fact that this is in the RM zone, doesn't envision that type of density, that type of height. Even it's not recommended in the most recent master plans. The council has not rezoned despite other nearby rezonings. They haven't rezoned this site or made any recommendations in the RM zone. So how do you, addressing the negative criteria, how do you reconcile what you're proposing with the fact that the zoning doesn't permit that and the master plan doesn't recommend it?
Sure. In a global sense, I would first say that the mayor and council have had the opportunity to zone nearby properties, and when they have selected 70 feet as an appropriate number in some cases, a 70 feet building height. They have selected 5 stories as being an appropriate height. And the densities and impervious coverages are also similar. But more specifically about this particular property, which is what you asked, in 2015, the Township Council approved a resolution where they spoke about the appropriateness of this property being developed for as a multifamily housing development with much greater number of units than the existing RM zoning would allow. In fact, it was almost the exact same number we're seeking today. And when you look at that number and you recognize that this site is 0.79 acres, the idea that there would need to be an increase in the building height and there would be a need for an increase in the building mass seems very obvious. So I think the council has looked at this property somewhat recently and did make a determination by passing a resolution that a development in the mid-60s is appropriate for the site. So since that was a finding of the mayor and council, I think it's one that this board can take judicial notice of.
I just want to say they didn't change the zoning. Yeah, okay. Then the next question is, can you provide testimony addressing cumulative effects of the requested variances for density, height, lot area, and the bulk variances? The significant deviations from the requirements of the RM zone, especially in light of the fact that the master plan, the zoning doesn't permit it and the master plan doesn't mention it or make recommendations regarding it.
I'm not sure if I understand your question. The zone does permit multifamily, and when you're saying
The
cumulative...
cumulative effects of the deviations from the RM zone, because you're requesting quite a few variances.
Ask the question.
That I did.
I didn't
She wants to
understand.
know that.
I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Okay, but
I am not clear of the question.
The question is, can you describe the cumulative effects of these significant
Variances with
deviations
what?
from the RM zone? It's not just height, it's not just density, it's all of this.
Can you do that, Mr. Lydon?
When you mean cumulative, you're just talking about this particular lot and the variance on this one lot.
On this one lot?
Okay, yes, I can.
Go ahead.
I think if you look at what the 2016 master plan amendments talked about, I believe that those goals and aspirations, although they were for a particular property just down the street from that, are very much transferable. And I think if you look at the proposed architectural plans, you'll see that the decrepit, dead, obsolete office building will be replaced with a much more attractive building, which will conform with the neighborhood pattern of development. And I think it is a building which will greatly increase the desirable visual environment and will have appropriate setbacks. So, yes, we are seeking a density variance and a height variance, but I think it's very much compatible to the historic pattern and the evolving pattern in the neighborhood. And it can be granted, in my estimation, in my opinion, without any substantial detriments to either what the mayor and council have sought or what the planning board has recommended.
All right, those are the only questions I have.
Thank you very much. You look like you also want to ask a question.
No further questions of the expert, but if the board wants me to clarify.
No, not at the moment. Anyone else? Okay, so let's go to the public if they have any questions of this expert. Okay, let's, if you have any questions, stand up and line up in the aisle. I think that would be the best way we can do it. Maybe we can do it in a expeditious manner.
Hello?
Hold on, while you get in line, please be quiet. Thank you.
And this is for questions only of this expert. Mr. Lydon is ready to answer anyone and everyone's question. Go ahead, please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is David.
However, you gotta speak up a little louder.
Louder?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, David Stella, S-E-L-O-V-E, first day.
Mr. Silo?
You were my office yesterday, you spoke really clear.
Oh.
So we're gonna have to hold it closer to your mouth.
Okay.
So the stenographer can pick it up.
And Mr. Silo, before you start, I just want to put on the record, I think you called my office and tried to speak to me. And you spoke to me in my office and you asked me certain questions which I did not answer. I told you that was not appropriate. So I just want to put that on the record. But go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear where you live. Would you mind us repeating?
169 West Forest Street. In each of the master plans from 2007 to 2017,
No, Mr. Silo, you gotta
slow down.
try and slow down,
Okay.
try to project.
I understand. In the master plans from 2007 through 2017, there's a regularly repeated goal and mandate. It says, preserve the character of existing low-density residential neighborhoods forming the predominant character of the township. And I've heard some of your replies so far. I'm changing my question because of that. When I was a little kid, I used to come home and tell my mom I wanted the same toy that Johnny had. And you know what she would say to me? I'm sure your mom must have said something very similar. They were like, Johnny jumped off the third floor, would you jump along with him?
So what's the question, Mr. Silo?
The question is, how can you describe maintaining the character and the existing density of the neighborhood when all the buildings behind this new development are 2 stories tall or 1 story tall, and they have greater setbacks and more space around them? They don't need special space for the kids to play, they need additional parking. I mean, there are other places.
Let them answer the question.
Okay.
One question at a time.
That is not the only goal of the master plan. There is another goal that talks about encouraging production and generation of multifamily housing where it will not impinge on single-family neighborhoods. This neighborhood fits that description to a T. So when you say to maintain the low-density neighborhood, it has to be placed in context of the neighborhood. I believe I have placed it in context. This is a multifamily neighborhood. You mentioned building heights. There's a building just to the east of us. That's 5 stories. There is a building approved just to the west of us at 5 stories. There is a building that is now occupied at 8 stories plus 2 levels of parking on Palisade Road just to the north of us. There is a building still under construction at 1500 that is 5 stories in height. There is a building that is now getting occupied at Avalon Bay, which is 5 stories. So yes, this 5-story building is consistent with the other buildings in the area, both existing, under construction, being occupied, and not yet constructed.
Are you aware of the row houses and the duplex houses and the garden apartments that are affordable and market rate apartments? They're in places like Englewood, Edgewater, Tenafly, even Brooklyn. Why can't we have homes like that that are developed?
I don't know how to respond to that question.
Is that an objection to the question?
Yes.
What's your objection?
My objection is, he's asking why projects can be built that we don't know about in other towns. We have no reference, we don't know those projects, so we really can't answer the question.
Fair enough. Next question.
In your previous testimony, you described, as you just did recently, a few minutes ago, 100 State Street's dimensions as 115 feet deep, 300 feet wide, and you note that a typical city lot is 50 feet wide and 100 feet deep. For the past several years, all the years that I've lived in Teaneck, I've noticed that on the West Englewood part of town, there's some very large houses and very large housing plots. I was wondering why those plots, which I think are probably comparable to this, weren't looked at or suggested.
This property is zoned for multifamily housing. I don't know where that zone is that you're talking about, but we are proposing to a dead obsolete office building that's non-conforming to the zone and replace it with a very attractive conforming office building. So I think that is one of the goals of the master plan.
This is a more of a statistical question. You said that in the last...
I'm sorry, this is one.
This is a statistical question. You said that the demand for rental housing has gone through the roof, and you cited the U.S. Census, the American Community Survey, and you highlighted a 5% vacancy rate as normal. I found some of the statistics that you cited, but I couldn't find anything that said demand had gone through the roof, nor that 5% is a normal condition for rental availability. You mentioned a moment ago a number that I did find, and that was that Teaneck's turnover was 0.6%, which looks very much like about 80% of America, based on a map that you can also get through the Census Bureau. So how can you elaborate on the term normal, or why 5% is the special number?
The question, can you elaborate on those numbers?
It's my expertise and my training, my education.
I see. Well, I thought you would have seen West Englewood in that case.
There was no question.
One last question.
Someone help the young lady down the stairs. All right, next question, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, well,
Are you holding the transcript you want for? You're looking at the transcript of Mr. Lydon said last time?
no, I have it with me, but I'm not looking at it.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. What I understand is that Teaneck recommended or approved a 10% affordable housing allowance in the building, but you were promoting a 15% affordable housing. What's the rationale for the additional 5%?
Well, by way of background, Mr. Chairman and board members, Teaneck was imposing a 10% affordable housing set aside. They, along with a lot of other municipalities, are in settlement agreements with the Fair Share Housing Center. They are, in all of those settlement agreements that I'm aware of, requiring a 15% set aside if it's a rental development. So we have been in contact with Teaneck officials. We understand that that is what they hope to agree to, and so we are willing to agree to the 15% set aside. My client would prefer to do a 10% set aside for financial reasons, but we are willing to do a 15% set aside and provide 10 affordable housing units for this development.
Okay, thank you.
And next person, please.
Please use the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Dr. Tanya Pagan Roger Ashley, and I'm just going to request that the doctor be included in the transcript, because I know last time Ms. Berger requested that my background not be included, but I am a doctor, and I appreciate that.
Just hold the microphone. No, don't let somebody.
Just for the record, I never did make any such request.
Thank you. So I'm here. Oh, is this close enough? I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes. Let's see if the people can
Can you hear
me.
me? Yes. All right. So I'm here to follow up on questions that I had. I'm sorry,
Mr. Lydon.
Mr. Lydon, am I saying it correctly? And Ms. Turnberger. I'm here to follow up on several questions that I had last time, and also issues regarding what you said today, because I live right down the street from the area that you spoke of. So,
what address do you live on?
I live at 33 West Tryon Avenue, Teaneck. You know, Teaneck. Okay. So let me start out, Mr. Lydon, by saying when you gave your background last time, you mentioned that you're a graduate from Rutgers Gloucester School.
I did not say Gloucester, it's Rutgers.
Okay, Rutgers.
That's not correct.
No problem.
What's working?
In environmental planning
And design, yes.
and design. Are you going to let me finish? Yeah.
I apologize. I apologize.
Okay.
But also, ask your question.
I'm trying very hard. He interrupted me.
Ask your question.
Okay. So, as an expert in that area, are you familiar with what's now called the Rutgers Edward J. Gloucester School of Planning and Public Policy, ergo that's why I refer to it in that manner? Are you familiar with their Planning Healthy Communities Initiative?
I'm aware of it. I don't know, I would say I'm very familiar with it.
Okay. I would like to enter into the record that that's an initiative by Rutgers Edward J. Gloucester School of Planning and Public Policy. And I enter it because Mr. Lydon says he's an expert in this area, and Planning Healthy Communities Initiative is a critical one as it pertains to what we're discussing in Teaneck.
So let me just
Yes, sir.
explain to you how things
Mike,
work.
Mike.
I don't think, I mean, you can ask that if you have something you want to refer to, but enter it into the record, you want to enter it as evidence, you're saying?
I would.
Right. So the rules of evidence work a little differently.
Okay.
The rules of evidence works that you need someone who has familiarized themselves with this document in a professional capacity, or the author of this document, or another expert who is in the field of planning, engineering, etc., who wants to testify in your on your behalf for this document. I mean, Mr. Lydon, in this case, said he's not familiar with it.
Okay.
So
May I at least mention the document, sir?
you can mention the document,
But I
but
can't enter it into.
Wait,
No,
wait, hold it. It's one at a time. We have a great stenographer, but even she can't keep up, okay?
so you can mention the document, but for us to understand what the document is about, you need someone to explain that is familiar with the area in the field of engineering, planning, etc., in order to lend some credence to the document that we can understand what it is. Otherwise, we don't really get your point, other than it's a piece of paper. And, you know, some people always say that a document speaks for itself, but it doesn't. It doesn't speak for itself. You need someone to testify as to the document. So, Mr. Lydon says he's not familiar. You want to be heard?
Yes.
One second. Mr. Lydon says he knows about this, what was it called again?
It's Planning Healthy Communities Initiative, and it's listed on the website.
No, I don't think he said that. I think he testified that he knows of the new name, or familiar with the new name of the Department of Planning. Is that what the question was before?
No, can I repeat my question, or do you want to?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Let's so
Mr.
we get it
White,
clear.
I had asked if you were familiar with the Planning Healthy Communities Initiative, which is by Rutgers Edward J. Gloucester School of Planning and Public Policy.
I'm somewhat familiar with it, yes.
I'll put it on there.
So then you can ask anything to follow up, and maybe what is familiar. You want to be heard?
Yes. This is cross-examination based upon his direct testimony.
I understand.
I believe that this is information that is not the basis of his direct questioning. Therefore, I'm going to object to this line of questioning.
I agree with you to a certain extent. I'm going to give a little leeway to the lay person here who's not an attorney, and therefore let's see what the questions are. But you know, Mr. Lydon knows the answer. He doesn't. It doesn't mean that he's supposed to know or he's not supposed to know. Let's see where it takes us. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I asked this question because during Mr. Lydon's last testimony, and even tonight, he
One
spoke.
second, somebody's talking over there. Can you, but counsel, Ms. Berger, I don't know who's standing
Mark,
on
you have to wait till they finish.
Can we, sir, please sit down. You're interrupting the questions and the answers. Go ahead.
Okay.
Try
You
to-
reference multiple documents, which are also included in the Planning, Health, and Communities, and the documents you mentioned, which are noted by the stenographer from last time, were the American Community Survey, the U.S. Census, and several other documents. You also mentioned the master plan. And so when we reference these documents as well as the master plan, we talk about healthy communities, and that's why I mentioned this.
So what is the question?
So my question is, I have several questions. One is, last time you testified, you said that there was 15, not you, the engineer testified there was 15 square feet. Wait, let me. There was 15 square feet for children to play in. And when I asked if he was aware of the standards, I was told that I had to ask Mr. Lydon, and I couldn't ask the question that day, so I'm going to ask him now. Is he familiar with what the standards are for the amount of play area that children need based on the 0.79 acres and you're building 68 units in that area? That's my first question.
Okay, so let's see if we can answer the first question.
No, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, next question.
Okay. The second is, you mentioned today that there were no single-family homes near the buildings that were recently built on Queen Anne Road, the buildings being built on State Street, as well as Avalon Bay. And I didn't know if you knew that 33 West Tryon Avenue, where I live and where many other people in this room live, there are one-family homes literally right across the street from the buildings that you mentioned. Were you aware of that?
You got the mischaracterization of my testimony.
Okay, repeat it, and please forgive me.
I worked on the 1500 North Teaneck Road development, and I am very aware that Amsterdam Avenue or street, the street borders that site. I said State Street didn't have any single-family homes on it.
I'm not going to dispute the gentleman, but I would just refer to the stenographer's notes from earlier. I live at 33 West Tryon. He said that I misquoted him, and he did say State Street earlier.
I don't know, but the record will reflect that next time. So,
But this is very important because he's making an argument that he's enhancing the community through this building, and that he's not creating any problems in the community, as is noted regarding low-density residential areas. And I'm trying to make a point that all around these
well,
buildings...
now you testify.
I'm sorry.
So ask the
Okay,
question.
so ask him again.
Yeah.
So are you aware that right up the street from the building on Queen Anne Road that you referenced, there are multiple one-family homes?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. All right, next. In terms of parking spaces, you mentioned that there were more than enough parking spaces for the 68 units. My understanding from the master plan and from other documents from the planning board and the city council is that we're supposed to have 2 spaces per apartment. Is that correct?
It may be what Teaneck may have said at one time, but that's not consistent with the RSIS requirements.
That was my question.
All right, so let's do a question again.
May I-
I understood it.
Okay. My understanding from the master plan, from documents that I reviewed, and regarding the plans you submitted and other documents, that there's a requirement in Teaneck
Is it true that there's a requirement in Teaneck to
have 2 parking spaces for each apartment?
There is no such requirement in Teaneck.
Okay. The next question is, you mentioned the children, and you mentioned fertility rates. Teaneck, are you aware that Teaneck has a very unique population and that our fertility rates are higher.
Do you know if the fertility rate is different in Teaneck than on average New Jersey?
It's fine. Wait a minute. I have no, sir.
Isn't that the
I
question?
have no problems with that. Can you answer the question, sir?
I don't know what the question is.
Do you know whether Teaneck is different as to the average New Jersey utility rate?
No, I do not know.
Okay. Because I'm not allowed to make any statements, right? We just ask some questions.
Questions only.
Are you familiar with the demographics of Teaneck? Because last time you brought up during your testimony the demographics of Jersey City. Are you familiar with the fact that the racial, ethnic, and religious demographics of Jersey City are different from Teaneck, and based on those demographic differences, that the fertility rate is different amongst the women in Teaneck versus Jersey City?
I do not know what the Teaneck specific fertility rate is.
That wasn't my question.
Okay. Next.
Okay, no problem. The next thing is that regarding the question that was asked of you earlier about the cumulative impact,
I'm sorry, the what?
there was a question regarding cumulative impact.
Oh, cumulative impact. yes.
Cumulative, okay. I want to follow up on that question. This is my last question regarding your planner. Are you familiar that when we do planning, you need to look at the cumulative impact of multiple buildings going up at once, as is the case of Teaneck, where we have approximately 250 units going up on Teaneck Road, about a block and a half. We've got your 68 units. We've got approximately a little over 200 units right down the block on the Queen Anne Road property, and I believe closer to 280 units in the Avalon building. So are you familiar as a planner, sir, as an expert planner, of the impact of that on the health of the community as well as the traffic on the community?
I didn't justify either of the health and traffic.
That was my question. I said, as a planner, doing an impact analysis, are you familiar with the impact of having that many units built at once in a community?
I'm going to object was asked and answered.
No, I don't care about ask and answer.
It's not.
Here's what I care about, is if Mr. Lydon can answer the question. But in fairness, I think to you, Ms. Berger, I don't think Mr. Lydon testifies to the health impact.
No, but my question to him was, he's a health planner.
Health planner, no. He is a licensed professional planner.
Licensed professional planner. So my question for him, is he aware of the health impact? I'm so sorry, thank you. Is he aware of the health impact as well as the traffic impact of the cumulative effect of having that many buildings built within a short period of time? And we're talking about approximately over 700 units within South Block area.
Are you aware of the health and cumulative health and traffic impact?
I would say no, Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, next person, please.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
I don't believe we need our engineer here or our traffic guy here.
Oh, I think we did both. Yes. Because I don't think he testified, did he?
Your engineer testified.
They both testified?
Yeah.
Traffic, but you're gonna make a report like this later. See? Are you gonna prepare a report? That's it?
We have to have any subsequent testimony.
I know.
What's your next witness?
Okay. Let's hang in because I don't see what happens after the questions. Go ahead.
Linda DiCarlo Burns, Teaneck resident.
You're gonna speak much louder and hold it.
Linda DiCarlo Burns, Teaneck resident.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Questions only.
Yes, Mr. Lydon, you had mentioned the proximity to public transportation, and I was wondering if you were aware of the ability for the public transportation in the area to absorb any additional people, commuters to New York City.
It can. It can do that because New Jersey Transit has the ability to adjust routes and adjust locations of bus stations, and that is part of their reason for existence, and they do that on a regular basis, mostly in consultation with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Association.
Were you aware that Senator Weinberg had a New Jersey Transit bus forum here in Teaneck last week?
No, I missed that.
Okay, well, she had a couple... I'm sorry?
Only questions.
Okay.
Because you will have an opportunity when everything is done in this case.
Okay.
Get your comments and tell us all information that you're going to testify to.
I'll do that. All right, the second question I have is, do you know when the former tenants of the property's leases expired at 100 State Street?
I don't have that information now.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking that question is I'm wondering if you know how long the building has been sitting empty.
I'm not sure.
I'll have an opportunity to answer this or provide information later. Or?
You can provide, at the end of the hearing,
Okay.
all the testimonies done, everybody can give their 2 cents.
Okay, those were my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. Teresa Edwards, it's Therise, Edwards, Edwards. Good evening, everyone. It throws everyone for a loop.
Questions for Mr. Lydon?
Yes, I have just a couple of questions based on your testimony tonight, and then a few questions with regard to the testimony you gave previously. You mentioned a couple of cases in talking about the variances you were seeking, and you mentioned Grasso, and I believe another one. Just for my own edification, can you just tell me when and where those rulings occurred? Could you repeat them and say when and where they occurred?
Yeah, the first one, the second one you didn't quite hear was Grubbs.
Oh, Grubbs, sorry.
That's okay. They're all New Jersey cases. I believe they're all Supreme Court cases, although I'm not the attorney. What's happened, just real briefly, is use variances used to all be looked at as one item. And then in the Coventry case, which did happen in Western, I know that, the court said, you know, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's a permitted use. They just don't meet some of the conditions. So why are we holding them to the same standards as if it wasn't a permitted use? So that was Coventry in Westwood. That was about 1993, I believe. And then a few years later, I think in Randolph Town Square, the court looked at a case where it was FAR, not FAR, it was an FAR case. And the court said the same reason we used in Coventry, and that was Randolph Township, should be applied to this other type of D variance. And then it just went down the chain. And Grubbs and Slother and the other case applied that idea of a lessened burden on both density and height cases. So you don't need to show the special reasons and you don't need to meet the Medici standard that courts used to hold density and FAR and conditional use applicants to. So it's a lower standard because the use is already permitted.
I think Randolph was 99.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And that was an FAR case.
Okay, all right. With regard to the affordable units, will they be comparable in size and amenities to the units that are not part of the COA?
We haven't gotten that far into the design of the building. They have been reserved, if you will, in the design that we're preparing. The bedroom distribution has been programmed into the building design. But as far as fit and finishes and even sizes, that hasn't gotten that far. And I will
testify, Mike, there's 2 one-bedrooms, 6 two-bedrooms, and 2 three-bedrooms, for a total of 10 units.
That is correct.
Right, and that is the count.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
50%
accurate,
grade.
yes,
And compliant with our new setback, correct?
yes.
And those,
And compliant with our new setback.
and those standards are consistent with the bedroom distribution that COA has established and the Fair Share Housing Center is looking to impose.
That answer your question?
Yes. It wasn't the answer I was hoping for, but it was a direct answer to the question, so yes. And then you mentioned a couple of properties along State Street that have equal or lesser coverage areas that are similar. Do you have images of those properties? You brought some images about the height, but
Well, one of them is the Palisades Roads development, so I do have images of that. But no, I have an image of that. That would be the one.
okay. All right, I think, okay, so I'm going to go on to the comments that you made both tonight
Maybe just
and...
before you go, and if you need a break? Okay, let's have a break after these questions.
Okay, so part of the comments you made at your last testimony and part were made tonight. The numbers that you gave, you said you got them from the Department of Education's website?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell me where on the website you obtained that data? Because the numbers that I found were different than the numbers that you quoted.
There is a website, and I have it bookmarked on my machine, so it says something along the line like Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending in New Jersey, and in there... Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending in New Jersey, and if you click through that website, similar name, it will take you to different reports on different districts. And I went to the Teaneck district for various years.
Okay. Can I show this to him? Am I allowed to?
Sure, show it to the attorney first.
Okay, sure.
That may be a DOE website, but that's not
say that.
the page
No
I
question.
went to.
One second. I don't know what you're talking about. No question there. Let's ask. Well, here's the procedure. You can ask Mr. Lydon for once Ms. Berger has looked at the document, okay, you can ask the following question to Mr. Lydon. Mr. Lydon, have you seen this document or this information before?
I think you already answered that before.
Not this particular arrangement of data, no. It's not.
Do you know what the data shows and where it's from?
It says it's from the State of New Jersey Department of Education, 2009-2010 enrollment. And it's specific to Teaneck Township.
Okay. Can you hold on to that for a moment? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can ask a question if you read off the document. Maybe it's reliable, maybe it's...
Well, I had assumed that this is where, since this is where the Department of Education posts the enrollment data, I guessed that was where and that was where.
I want to ask him, maybe, do you know if this is the location where the school, what was it?
This is where the Department of Education posts the enrollment data for all of the districts in the state of New Jersey.
Mr. Lydon, is that true?
It may be one of the places they post enrollment data. There's at least one other place where they post enrollment data.
And where would that be, Mr. Lydon?
School finance, state of New Jersey, Department of Education, school finance, Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending, 2018 is one page that I have. There's a 6-page website, or the 6 pages in this
So
website.
the one, I'm sorry, your name again was?
Teresa Edwards.
Teresa, Ms. Edwards showed you was from 2009?
Well, I have 3 years in here. I have the 2 years that he has testified to, and then I have an additional year, which is the 17-18.
So the one you have there, Mr. Lydon, 17-18? The one you,
2018.
okay, 2018. Why don't you ask him to compare or
Yeah, we can contrast and compare.
whatever you want to ask, just, see if we can get a good question. And we'll challenge Mr. Lydon.
Okay.
He likes that.
Based on the information that I found using this
What is this?
document that I just handed
In
him.
2009?
Well, it's 2009, 2010, and then 2016, 2017, because that's what he referred to in his testimony. For the decade, he indicated that there was a total drop in enrollment of 541 students.
I remember that.
Okay. Using the numbers from the department, the New Jersey Department of Education's DOE data, enrollment, the drop would be a total of 462 students. Do you think that's fair to say, if looking at
I can't possibly say it's fair, accurate, or inaccurate. I do have the numbers that DOT reported on this form for 2016, 2017. It said that the average daily enrolled plus sent students was 3,621. Is that the number that you have?
You're looking at 16, 17?
16, 17.
Actually, no, I have 3552.5, so they funded the half the student.
Right, so I have a higher
So
number.
I think if I could help you for a second, that number includes sent students. This number does not include sent students.
Okay.
I think that's the.
That's the discrepancy, okay.
Okay,
So you're both right.
Correct.
Okay, so then turning your attention to 2017, 2018, just on the forms that I don't know, do you have data? You said you didn't have anything past 16, 17.
Not with me, no.
Okay. So looking at the information that I obtained that doesn't include the said data, it shows a slight uptick in enrollment. From 6 to, yes, about 32 students, yes.
Well, in the 10 years that I offered testimony on, I would not be surprised if there was fluctuations year to year, up or down. I was looking at the two end points, the beginning of the decade and currently.
Okay, so with that, have you attempted to contact the district to get any more current data from the 18-19 school year or projections for the 19-20 school year?
No, I did not.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that for the 2018-2019 school year, the district received a state grant to increase their preschool enrollment?
No, I am not.
Okay. So for this school year, they did receive a...
Ask the question.
Okay,
I'm
so
not aware of
we're-
that. So next
Okay.
question.
Are you aware that the district received a subsequent grant to further increase the preschools for the district?
No, I am not.
Okay, so would you be surprised to learn that the preschool numbers from 2017 to 2018 to projection for 2019-2020 shows an increase of 114 students?
I'm going to
Are you
object
surprised? I don't know if the
because I
question.
don't know if it's appropriate to talk about being surprised.
Okay.
He's not.
Are you aware,
Okay.
hold on, let me help, Ms. Berger, let me help.
Let me
Ms.
rephrase.
Edwards. Are you aware that according to the data that Ms. Edwards is referring to, that there's an increase of 815 students in the year of 2018?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm not.
From 2017-18 to 2019-20.
150 students, are you aware of that?
114.
114 students increase, are you aware of that?
No.
Okay, next question.
Okay. All right, we're going to, okay, just one more question regarding the, have you gone to the district website to look at the budget information, which is what they submit to the Department of Education and how they provide the data to the public?
No, I do not.
Okay, so
Why
then,
are those questions relevant?
I'm sorry?
Why are those questions, and when they went to the website to see how much money they get, relevant?
Because in addition to that includes enrollment numbers.
Okay.
I was just about to get to that.
So he didn't go to that website, so he doesn't know anything.
Okay, so then you're not aware that the projected enrollment for next year is 3,945 students?
No, I looked at the reporting numbers, I'm sorry. I looked at the reporting numbers.
In fairness to your question about projections, the projections of what happens next year is, very hard for an expert to testify. It's very hard for an expert to testify to.
Well, they were actually carrying over the numbers for
Okay.
the current year.
Any more questions?
Hold it. The conversations can go in there or out there, because we're gonna pick up everything you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I'm just making sure. Right, I'm sorry, if everybody's standing, please have a seat, because we're going to take a break after Ms. Edwards. Ms. Edwards, any other questions of this witness?
Not about the enrollment numbers, but I do have a couple about the traffic.
About the traffic?
Yes.
The traffic that he testified to, or the traffic engineer that they had?
Well, he mentioned some of the information from the traffic study. Unfortunately, I was not here for that, and I didn't get a copy of it anyway, had to over it. So as much as he is able to answer.
You have to, did you read the transcript from the prior hearing? Because it's not fair to ask him questions that he may or may not. I mean, if he testified to A, B, and C about traffic, about parking, I don't know what he testified to that you want to bring forward. And then that's a fair question, I think. But I'm not gonna,
Well, he did testify that, according to the transcript,
okay, so ask him, is it
and the
true?
traffic, it's interesting, if you view the traffic studies, traffic on State Street has gone down since the earlier application.
Are you reading from a specific page and line in the transcript?
It's 146, starting at line 13.
146. So what is your question with respect to that?
Okay, according to the testimony by the traffic engineer, you said 2016, but I believe you meant 2015, did you not? Because I believe that's what's used.
I'm not sure when the traffic count was taken. That was the earlier application versus this application.
Okay. So, with respect to that was used, it was the 2015, were you aware that the evening count, the data was collected at a time when 2 of the 3 high schools were on half-day sessions?
No. I was reporting what the traffic studies found.
Okay, in addition to that, with the calculation of the, I'm sorry, I lost my place. With the future NOVA and the New Jersey DOT annual background growth rate that was used, I'm sorry, this is, I believe it's your A14. And I am on page 3. beginning of bullet point, it's paragraph 3. Where,
What, on the transcript page 3?
oh, no, I'm sorry, on the traffic study report?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. This isn't my usual stock and trade.
It's fine, don't worry. I'll help you as much as I can.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had it, I'm sorry. I thought you had
I
it.
cannot see what you're
Testify on
referring
the
to.
traffic study.
Yeah, but you're gonna ask him a question about the traffic study? He's not the traffic expert.
Okay.
Unless he
Can the
testified.
can the traffic person who's here answer it then?
The traffic expert already testified. Testimony is concluded.
Okay, so then will I be able to point out the extreme deficiencies in the report when I make my comments later?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll go for it then.
Thank you very much. The court reporter needs a break, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. Then the next person, I guess, is you and the sure.